Yo, what's going on, people? So we're back again with another video. Today we're going to be going over market structure using an indicator called Williams Fractals. So I'll show you my settings, I'll show you how to identify structure, as well as how to use this indicator with the EMC strategy. So let's get straight into it. Now the indicator is called Williams Fractals. So what you want to do is you want to click on the indicators and you want to type in Williams Fractals. It's going to be the very first one. Once you've done that, you click on that and then you want to basically choose your settings. Immediately, it will give you a default period of 21. Basically, what that means is every 21 candles, it will show up with either a green triangle or a red triangle, depending on what symbol you've put. In this case, I've got triangles, so it will show up every 21 candles. Depending on if there is a high or low, the algorithm has written it so that it identifies highs and lows and will print out any red or green triangles if the algorithm believes it to be a high or if it believes it to be a low, right? But going back to the actual settings itself, the default period is going to be a 21. We're going to change that to a 2. Basically what we're saying is every two candles, price and the algorithm itself is going to give us a high or low. That way we're able to identify highs and lows. Very, very easy, especially with EMC as well, being an easy strategy. Once you've got all of those settings set out, this is where the strategy comes into play. So just identifying highs and lows and how to use it and how to market, right? Let's start with this current price action. As you can see, we already have a bearish fractal over here, right? If we drag this across, we have a small breaker structure over here. This candle, this bearish candle here is the one that's responsible for breaking this low over here. So again, the fractals is very easy for you to just identify highs and lows. If you know you've got a fractal here that's identifying a swing low or a pivot low, this is very easy to use to identify, right? So we're going to take this for where it is. So once we've got that down, all we need to see is just play price and you'll see how price just created another swing low, right? So this will now be another swing point over here. Now, in order for us to even decide to look for more trades going lower, this swing point needs to be broken. Same way how this one here was broken, right? It broke below, price went up, and then it tapped into this area, right? And I'll show you how to draw it and how I draw it. It taps into this area, which is technically someone can turn around and say it's some sort of water block, which technically would be right, but that's a whole different strategy in itself. And then as it taps into that area, price decides to sell off a bit more. So you can see it is a valid breaker structure area, and the fractals do mark it off as valid areas as well. So let's just see what price is going to do next, basically, right? Okay, now you can see that we've got another breaker, we've actually got another fractal higher, right? Now this just means price is creating higher lows. But as you already know, the market cycle, you have higher highs, higher lows, lower lows, higher highs, right? In order for us to get a higher low, we should have had a higher high, which we did not get. However, it does not mean that this fractal is now invalid. It just depends on how you personally as an individual want to see the market. Ideally, of course, you can mark this out. Your higher high would have been around this point over here, right? Of course, there's no fractals to be marked because the algorithm did not identify this area as a higher high, right? So when you're using the fractals, it's totally up to you. You can identify highs and lows without using fractals, or you could use the fractals to identify the highs and lows without second guessing yourself. So if you want to use a strategy where highs and lows are identified for you, stick to it. Don't jump between the two. Stick to whatever it is that you feel comfortable with, right? Because that will be the best way for you to basically identify structure, but also for you to not mess up or fiddle with the strategy that you're currently using. As you can see now, we had a low over here, we had a higher low. Technically, we didn't have a higher high in accordance with the fractals, but we did have a higher high over here, and now we've got a higher low again, right? So in other words, we could say this is actually our low now. You can say that's our low now, and then this will be our higher high, and then this is now our higher low. However, as you can see what the price do just now, price just broke our higher low. So in this case, as you know, market structure, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, higher low. That's an uptrend, and vice versa for a downtrend, right? However, in this case, once we get an area in which a higher low has been broken to the opposite direction, that is a change of character or a change in direction, right? Or even a break of structure. It just depends on how you want to say it. Same sort of terminologies, same meanings, same things, right? Of course, they're all going to be different depending on what it is you are seeing. However, in this case, this will be a change of character, because we were once going from a bullish sentiment for a very small period of time, and then price became bearish after breaking past a higher low, right? So we are now anticipating for price to make lower lows and lower highs in order for it to keep going back down, right? But this is where fractals come into play. As we can see, we already have this area that has already been broken. We already see that, right? Not only was that area broken, we have another fractal with the very same candle that broke the first fractal that created that breaker structure, right? And in fact, I can change this to a change of character, because I can do it right here. I can change that to a change of character. And then we still have this one over here, right? However, this candle did not close below this fractal, but it's wicked it, right? But I'm only marking this area here just in case the next candle decides to break below it. So we'll find out in a second. As you can see, it didn't break below it. Now it's broken below it, right? Now, as it's broken below it, what has price done? It's created another fractal, right? So now this becomes a low. This becomes a new low. Are you still with me? So that's what's happening with the market right now. Now, the way to draw zones, especially with fractals rather than lines, because typically I use zones or boxes to draw these areas rather than actual lines. So the best way to do this would be, if you've got a bearish candle, you want to do the wick or the lowest point of the wick for a bearish candle to the body open, right? In this case, as you can see, for this candle, there is no wick to the upside of this body. So in other words, the body open would actually be in line with this just there. I will draw a box like this, right? Now that's one official break. And the reason why I'm drawing boxes is because it's easier to read, right? I can drag this across, and guess what? The very same fractal that I marked, that I knew broke this area here, is also responsible for this area to be a support area, right? But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. So what we're going to do, we're going to dial it back. We're going to go back to the original breaker change of character that we had, which was over here, right? Would you look at that? Now I can actually get rid of this one here. So now this is what I mean. So the very low of wherever you've got a fractal, if you've got a red fractal, as you can see, we've got a red fractal but a bullish candle, doesn't make a difference. It's the reason why it's like that is because if you look at the wick, this bearish candle has a higher wick than this one. So that means price did travel below this very low point once before in time, but then decide to push back up. However, this will still be a low because I'm taking into consideration the wick in how far the wick traveled, right? So it's still a low. So whichever candle, so don't just look at the candle, look at the fractals as well, right? So in this case, we've got a fractal, a bearish fractal here. That's what we're going to call it. We're going to call it a bearish fractal, not a bearish candle. We've got a bearish fractal over here. We're going to take it from the lowest point to the body open. The body open is at the very top of this candle, not the wick, the candle, because it's a bearish fractal, right? If it was a bullish fractal, so like this bearish candle here that we can see, and it's a bullish fractal, guess what we're going to do? The very high of that wick to the body open, which was or to the body close, sorry, because it's a bearish candle, so it would be here, right? And as you can see, if I drag that across, you still got a little bit of wick appearing, right? Now, if you guys had noticed what just happened, the same fractal that we marked up before, the bearish fractal, and the bullish fractal that we just marked up just now is actually the same area as each other. So that's how you know that this fractal or these fractals actually give you support and resistance areas, supply and demand, and it allows you to identify breaker structures very clearly, right? So this area alone itself, if I can draw another one here, look, this area alone in itself, it literally matches up. Look, what did price do in previous time? As it came down to this area, price acted as support, pushed back up, came back down, pushed back up a little bit, broke below. As it broke below, guess what is responsible for that break below? Or guess what is responsible for the break below, but then also for the push back up? This fractal down here, right? And I'll get rid of these two over here. This fractal, this bearish fractal and the bearish candle, this one here, is responsible for this one here. Not only is that the one responsible, this one here is also responsible. Because you remember, you're always going to have more than one area that is responsible for the same thing. That's why we prefer to use areas or boxes rather than solid lines. Solid lines can never tell you the full story. If you've got an area or you've got a box, you can identify roughly, because again, nothing in the market is 100% accurate, but you can identify roughly what areas are responsible for which price action, right? Of course, we've got two boxes there. We don't need the two boxes there, but we can identify, okay, these two boxes are in the similar area. I can take one box away and just leave another box there, but the price action is still the same, right? So that's how I draw the boxes, and that's how I identify highs and lows, especially when it comes to EMC. So in this case, look, we've got another break over here, right? So this is the breaker structure to the downside. Not only do we have a breaker structure to the downside there, guess what? We also have another fractal to this left-hand side that was also broken, right? So these two are the two breaker structures. However, the one I'll be more focused on is this very first one here, because technically this one over here is like previous price action basically. However, it's still responsible. This still broke the two, so I'm not 100% going to ignore this one, because in order for me to ignore this one, I will still have to focus on this one, and price would still have to travel past both of them. So it would have to travel past this area here and also tap into this area here. But in order to tap into this area, it still has to travel past this area in the first place. So it's not like I'm ignoring it 100%, but I just don't need to focus on it because I'm more focused on the very first one rather than the previous one, right? But I still draw it out and say, okay, I know price has broken this one. I know price has broken this one. I know price has broken this one, for example, right? So that's what I will do. So in terms of EMC, what we're going to do now is I'm actually going to show you how to identify these breaker structures with EMC, right? And that was a clear identification right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this back a bit. Now with this, what we're going to do is we're going to show you how to do this with EMC, right? As you know, with EMC, if you don't know, there'll be a link. Now, if you don't know about EMC, there'll be a link in the top right corner that shows you how to trade EMC. Now, in order for you to identify breaker structures with EMC, especially on a higher time frame, including the setup time frame, I'm going to show you that now, right? And how to draw these boxes accurately for, accurate results, or just how to draw these boxes accurately. What we're going to do now is I'm going to show you that. So we're going to start off on the daily, we're going to go to the weekly, and then I'm going to go to the monthly as well. And I want to show you how exactly I draw it out, right? So now, what we're going to do now is, as you can see, we've got this bearish fractal over here with a bearish candle. However, the impulse actually starts from here, from this very candle here. Now again, if you're not familiar with the strategy, then go back and watch the video. But if you're familiar with the strategy, you'll understand what I'm doing so far, right? We've got a bearish fractal over here, which marks a breaker structure, because this candle now, this last bearish candle is the one that's responsible for breaking that one and also breaking this one. We have two areas over here. That's one breaker structure over here. And then we also have another breaker structure over here, right? Now we've got two areas. Now I'm actually going to refine the very first one, and I'm going to bring it down in line with the body open of the very first impulse candle. Now I'm doing that because if I was to leave it here, which is basically for the fractal itself, now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to refine it a little bit. So I'm going to bring this down a little bit more, right? And what I'm also going to do now is I can see we've got two zones. However, the very first zone, which is this one down here, I'm not liking how small that is. Also, the impulse is not very strong, right? I would like to see price actually create maybe another bearish candle down here. Then I know, okay, the retracement more than likely could stop in this area over here. However, I don't believe it's going to do that. So in these times where I see prices broken more than one area, typically what I do is I take the highest point or the highest area that I can see closest to the very beginning of the impulse, and I will try and drag or refine those areas back down to the lowest point or the last fractal that price broke, right? So in this case, this one here, I can actually get rid of. And I'm only getting rid of that because what I'm going to do is now I'm going to merge this one with this one here. So then it becomes one big area, right? That's what I'm going to do. So that's what we've just done now. So basically we've covered one area here and we've also covered the second area here, right? Now I'm only doing that because with the very first one, if price was to do this and close above the box, guess what? It's invalid, right? If price was to, let's get rid of the first one. If price was to do this and close above the box, but I didn't draw this one here, guess what? This one is invalid. But what happens if price does that, becomes invalid, and then still goes in my direction? There needs to be some sort of caveat in a way which I'm like, okay, do you know what? This is 100% invalid. So because I know that it's broken one area and two areas, price is more than likely to stop between either the first area or the second area. But instead of having two different zones to complicate things, I will just merge both of those zones into one big zone, and I will just wait and watch price action and see what it does. If I no longer like the price action, guess what? I'm out. I'll leave it. Simple. So that's why we've got one big zone, right? So let's go again. We've got this area over here. We merge these two together. Boom. So it covers this fractal here and it also covers this fractal here, right? One big zone. Now we're just going to wait for two retracement candles. So two retracement candles. And if you've watched my grading system video, this right now would be a B setup. Actually, no, tell a lie. Sorry, it will be an A setup, right? Because it pulled back to the 38.2. It pulled back to a support turn to resistance area, right? And it was a support area because all of these red fractals count as a support area, which is why we're waiting for that breaker structure to the downside. So it's a support turn to resistance. Price broke below, pulled back. We're hoping it acts as resistance, right? In this area here, we're hoping that it acts as a resistance area over here, and then also pulls back down. So support turn to resistance, or resistance turn to support, which is the complete reverse. So that's what we're waiting for, right? Now, as you can see, we've got our setup. Simply, I would adjust my fib, but before I decide to even go for entries, what I'm going to do is I am going to go to the higher time frame, and I'm going to look for anything that is stopping me from taking these setups, right? So higher time frame needs to be in line also. We've got this area here, which is a support area. Now, when I'm drawing my zones on a higher time frame, I just use the wicks. Similar to what I do with the daily setups, which is the body and the wick. But on the higher time frame, I just use the wick. So the weekly and the monthly, we are using the wicks only, right? So we've got a support area over here. Not too concerned about this wick over here because there's a fractal, but technically it's in line with this fractal over here. So we're looking at current price action, right? And then we also have another support area over here. I'm not too concerned about that one either because we would be selling into that area before price decides to even take off. Now, if you look at it, what's happened, right? This very first red box here at the very top, this was a weekly support area. Price broke down the area on a daily time frame and then pulled back into both the daily support turn to resistance area and also the weekly support turn to resistance area, right? So it's broken both of those zones, including this small rejection that we can clearly see, right? Not only that, we have this monthly support area over here, which we are aiming to sell into, right? Bear with me, let me just get rid of this. So we're aiming to sell into this monthly support area over here. That's what we're hoping for, right? So I already know, okay, we've got monthly support area here. We're aiming to sell into that area before price decides to completely reverse and then turn bullish. So in other words, daily bearish, weekly bearish, monthly isn't bearish nor bullish yet, right? But as soon as we tap into there, more than likely we'll turn bullish. So as long as I got 2 of those time frames in accordance with each other, I'm still going to take the sell, right? So that's what I will do. Now I will go to the 4-hour time frame, and again, you know the strategy. So I will just wait for that breaker structure to the downside of the 61.8, and I would enter the sell. So we have a breaker structure there. Oh, nope, didn't. Okay, so we've got breaker structure there. So in this case, entry there. Few fits above the 88. Target negative 27. Okay, so we got tagged in. Excuse that, because that actually should have been above there to get that 1 to 3. There you go. Even if you did get stopped out, guess what? You could have got back in again after that break of the 61. Price is playing around now. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust our fib. We got stopped out. Simply, again, if you're playing price action, it's up to you. You could have either got stopped out and then moved on to a different pair, or you continue to watch price and see that if you could get another break, another entry basically, right? But this is what's going to happen. It went straight to TP. Again, you could have entered again at some point, somehow. And now if I go back to the monthly time frame, you'll see that that's exactly where we was. So we sold into that monthly support area and we got tagged in, right? There we go. Sold into that monthly support area. Simple. So that's how I will do it. Now, if I give you another example, and again, this you can do this on any pair. So I can even just break this down on UK oil, for example. So let's go back in time. Cool. So now what we're going to do is, look, we've got a break structure to the downside. We've got an impulse as well, right? Here. We've got one breaker structure over here, and I've changed it back to blue. This is the lowest point. I'm not concerned about this one. I'm not concerned about this one. Technically, I could be concerned about this one because it had a smaller, lower wick than this one here. This area also, so I could merge all 3 of those together based off of the very first or the lowest point ever for the fractal break. This one, the reason why I'm not concerned about this fractal is because this fractal was broken by this candle, right? But this candle is the candle that formed before the initial break. So therefore, I'm not concerned about that one. I'm more concerned about the fractals that were broken from the newest impulse that we've just watched, right? So this entire area. Now, this is why it's good to draw boxes rather than actual lines. Because if price was to break above this line, you would have said this is invalid, right? But technically it was still valid up until the point where this candle now broke above this area here. So now it's no longer valid. As you can see, price decided to come back down. However, if we're talking entries, you would have got stopped out if you decided to enter before price even decided to come back down. So that's why we just wait our turn, right? Look again. This would have been a breaker structure to the downside. You could have grabbed this one as well. That's an invalid setup now because it decided to break back above support turn to resistance. So now that it's resistance, we're hoping that it turns back into support. Now, some people might get mixed up. So especially when it comes to EMC, you want to be able to identify the most recent fractals that have been formed. So we see how this one is now invalid. Guess what? You do not use this area as a support area, right? You don't use it twice, you don't use it 3 times, you don't use it 4 times. You don't keep your areas there. If an area becomes invalid, guess what? You delete it and you wait for the newest fractal to form, and then you take your analysis based off of the newest fractals formed. You don't use the old fractals that you've used before. It doesn't work, okay? So now that that one became invalid, I'm not expecting it to add to support. Guess what? There's a bullish fractal over here. This becomes our resistance turned to support area. We're not going to use this one, right? So we're hoping that price breaks above to come back, retest to go higher, and then obviously we get involved with the bullish setups. Boom, boom, there we go, right? And now we've actually got a setup. However, the retracement decided to create a lower wick over here, so we're not actually going to get involved with that. Does price create another bullish fractal? Yes, it does, right here. So then all we need to do is now we just wait for price to create that impulse and break that area. Price created another bullish fractal and also a bearish fractal, so we just wait to see what price does. Okay, price now went above this one here, right, ever so slightly. We get rid of that one. I can actually get rid of this one, and we just wait. Now that's an official break. There we go. So now we have an impulse and now we have a correction. Go to the higher time frame. What's on the higher time frame? We have a resistance area over here that we'll probably be buying into, and then we also have a previous resistance area here, which is now actually acting as support. There we go. So what did price do? If I bring this forward, we have this support area over here, which is actually no. So we have a resistance turned to support area over here, which is this red box over here, which is on a monthly time frame. Price broke above it ever so slightly on the daily time frame, came back, pulled back into the resistance turned to support area on the daily time frame, which is this blue box over here, right? So monthly bullish, or we're expecting it to be bullish now. Daily bullish, right? And then the weekly time frame, which is this one over here, which we haven't actually got to just yet, so ignore this candle because TradingView likes to show the future of the candles. But obviously you can clearly see it's heading that way anyways before we get there. But we've got this resistance area over here on the weekly time frame, and we are expecting for price to basically push up into that direction. Simply, we adjust our fibs, obviously for entry, since we've got the second retracement candle, and there we go. That should be the break. Yep, that's the break. Entries at the 61.8, and we're targeting the negative 27. You got tagged in. Yes, we hit stop loss a little bit. Cool, no problem. We just wait for another break of the retest. If price decides to tag us in, so that should probably be the break. There we go. You definitely would have got tagged in because you would have put your entries a few pips above. Also, that was probably news. Yes, it was news because it was at 1 p.m. on, New York session. So that was news. There we go. TP hit. We bought into that weekly resistance area. So this is how I draw those boxes, right? Very easy, very simple. There's no second guessing when it comes to using fractals. Just wait for the most recent fractals to be formed. If those fractals are broken in the opposite direction of how you've drawn it, guess what? Don't use it. Wait for the newest fractal to be formed. Fractals are very easy to identify. Pivot highs and pivot lows, swing highs, swing lows. Very easy, as long as you know how to use it. Again, when it comes to the daily time frame, which is the setup time frame, body and wick, right, for those boxes. When it's the higher time frame, so the weekly, the monthly, use the wicks only. And now I'm only saying that because the areas, if I was to do body and wick on the weekly and monthly time frame, for example, like here, for example, and then go to the daily time frame, you see how that entire body for the box is a massive area. But if I had just done the wick, the area would have been much smaller, right? Not many candles is actually inside it now. So that's why I typically use the weekly and the monthly time frame with the wicks rather than the body and the wick, right? Just because of that reason alone, because it could also give you false representations and false direction. Very simple, easy way to identify structure using fractals. I hope this makes sense to everyone. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, tap in. Let's get it. Peace.